Alright guys, today we're going to add integers, and the goal or the objective would be I can add positive and negative integers. Now before we get to adding positive and negative integers, we're going to quickly discuss the definition. So what is an integer? An integer is any whole number greater than 0, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth, and their opposites, which are numbers less than 0, but they're on the negative side, such as negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 100, negative 1,515. It's an infinite amount of numbers, guys. So integers, again, are positive and negative whole numbers. So if we have the integer of 17, its opposite would be negative 17. If the integer is negative 8, its opposite is positive 8. If the integer is 23, its opposite is negative 23. So let's not forget what integers are: positive and negative whole numbers. Now, before we add integers, I'm going to quickly discuss what zero pairs are. Zero pairs. It's when I put two numbers together and they equal 0. So let's talk money. Here I have a dollar bill. So that means you have $1, which means positive 1. If I take that dollar away, that means this is what I'm doing. Negative 1. I'm taking it away. Well, how much money will you have? 0. You would have $0. Now, as another example, in this picture, how much money do you have? You have $3. That's positive 3. However, you go to the store and you get rid of $1, $2, $3. That means you gave away $3. Well, how much money do you have now? Well, now you have $0. That is zero pairs, guys, when you add the opposites. Now here I have positive 3, here I have negative 3. If you have a positive 3 and a negative 3, you're going to end up with 0. Alright, so here's the definition. A zero pair is a pair of numbers whose sum is 0. So it's when you add a pair of numbers whose sum is 0. Let me give you an example using the number line. Now let's say that this black dot represents my positive numbers. The red dot represents the negative numbers. Alright, let's say I have positive 5. So remember, we always start at 0. That's our starting point. So if I have positive 5, that means I'm going to move this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would stop right here. Now, let's say that I have negative 5. Okay, that means I would go back 5 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where would I end up? Exactly. I would end up at 0. So, make sure that you understand that a zero pair is basically when you have a number and its opposite. That equals 0. Now let's go ahead and move on to adding integers. Alright, let's begin with Mickey Mouse stuff. Let's say I want to add 5 plus 2. Alright, so I'm going to add, here's the 5 plus 2. Now notice this is a positive number, therefore I'm going to move to the right towards positive numbers. 1, 2. Where did we end up? At 7. Okay, again, I'm just doing this because I'm going to get to a point in just a moment. Let's say let's add 3 plus 6. Okay, I know that you know it equals 9, but let's prove it. Here's 3, and you're going to add, what are you going to add? 6. It's a positive 6. So that means I'm going to move to the right towards the positive numbers, not to the back towards negatives. Okay? Alright, so let's add 3 plus 6. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What is your answer? 9. Alright, now let's add with negative numbers. I'm not going to continue showing you how to add positive numbers because that's baby stuff. You already know how to do that. Let's add negative numbers. Let's add 4 plus negative 8. Alright, So we're going to start here at 4, and we're going to add, but what kind of number are we going to add? We're going to add a negative. So negatives, are they to the right or to the left of the number line? Well, obviously they are towards the left of the number line. So we're going to move 8 digits or 8 units to the left. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What would your answer be? -4. Let's try another one. Let's add 4 plus -2. Sorry, let me go ahead and write the negative in red. I apologize. 4 plus -2. Now guys, real quickly, I'm going to explain why I'm putting that parentheses here. I'm putting the parentheses there because if I put it like this, that looks like 4 plus -2. The parentheses here lets you know that the operation is addition, 4 plus, and this represents that it's a negative, not 4 plus minus. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. All right, moving on. So here I have 4, so we're going to begin right over here. All right, plus -2. All right, well, what are we adding? Plus a negative. Okay, remember, positives move to the right, negatives move to the left. So if I'm going to add a -2, I'm going to move towards the left. How many times? Twice. All right, so 1, 2. What's my answer? It is +2. So 4 plus -2 equals a +2. Keep in mind, guys, of your numbers. Okay, it is not a negative, it is a positive, but the negative would be over here. Okay, let's try another one using the number line. All right, this time let's start with the negative. -6 plus +2. All right, let's see what that equals. This time we're starting at a negative, so we're here at -6 plus, what kind of number are we adding? A +2. That means positive numbers move to the right of the number line. So I'm going to move 2 units. 1, 2. Well, where did my number land? On a -4. Okay, now guys, I can continue on with the number line. I'm going to give you one last example, and then we're going to move using circles. Last example on the number line is going to be -8 plus 13. All right, well, I'm going to add what kind of number? A positive number. That means I'm going to move to the right on the number line. So let's begin with -8. Let's move 13 units to the right because it's positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, where did we land? We landed on a +5. Now, guys, once you take the test, a quiz, you're not going to have the number line to help you. You can draw it if you want, but I'm going to show you in just a moment, after a few more examples, I'm going to show you a super, super easy way on how to add integers. But I hope so far you understand it. All right, well, remember earlier I explained to you that the red represents the negative and the black represents the positive. So let's go ahead and add some integers using the circles. All right, let's say I want to add -3 plus 5. Well, using pictures, I'm going to have 3 reds. That represents the negative. 1, 2, 3. And how many positives do I have? I have 5. That represents my positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, earlier when I was giving you the example with money, we talked about 0 pairs. And 0 pairs is when you add the opposites, right? When you add a -1 and a +1. -5, +5. -8, +8. In this case, we're going to go ahead and cancel our zero pairs. If I have one negative and one positive, that's a zero pair. That disappears. It's zero. One negative, one positive, that's a zero pair. One negative, one positive, that's a zero pair. What do you end up with? Well, you end up with what? Two positives. Okay, so my answer would be 2. Now, I'm going to prove this using the number line. Just a few seconds ago, we had -3 plus 5. And we said the answer was going to be a positive 2. Well, let's prove it. I'm going to start here, -3. I'm going to add what number? A positive. That means I'm going to move to the right side of the number line. I'm going to move 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was my answer 2? Yes, it was. Let's go ahead and try another one. This time, let's try the opposite. -5 plus 3. All right, well, I'm going to use the circles. Remember, the red represents the negative, and the black represents the positive one. Okay, so here I have 5 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I have 3 positives. 1, 2, 3. Remember, zero pairs is when you have a positive and a negative. Okay, positive and a negative. 0, 0, 0. What are you left with? Well, in this case, I'm left with 2, but what color is it? It's red, so that's -2. All right? Now, guys, please don't forget to put your sign. Notice that the negative always has this little minus looking sign in front of it. And positive numbers such as 4, 5, 12, and so forth. Now, it could have this little positive sign in front of it, but a positive number doesn't need to have it. Okay, it can, but it doesn't have to have it. A negative number must have the negative sign in front of it in order to be considered a negative number. All right, keep that in mind. All right, let's move on using the number line. Here we have the same numbers. This time we're starting at -5. I'm going to add +3. That means positive numbers are to the right. I'm going to move right 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Our answer is -2. On the number line, our answer was also -2 using the circles. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you one last example using circles, and then we're going to get to the super, super easy part. This time, let's add double negatives. Let's do -4 plus -8. All right. Well, here I have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives plus 8 negatives. It's the same color. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now think about it, guys. Here, do we have 0 pairs like this where you can cancel a positive and a negative? No, we don't. In this case, they're all red. So what we're going to do is we're going to add them all. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12. But what color are they? They're red. That means they're all negative. So in this case, I have -12 as my answer. Now, if both digits are the same, as in 4 plus 8, you notice that they're both positives. So my answer is going to be +12. Again, with positive numbers, you know the answer. When they're both negatives, such as -5 plus -3, well, they're both negatives. You can't cancel anything out. So your answer would be -8. Okay, pretty easy. I hope you get the point. Let's go ahead and use what I call the scoreboard. On the test, guys, some of you are going to forget the rules on how to add positive and negative whole numbers. So, like I said, you're not going to have the number line, and you're not going to have the chips, the colored chips, to use on your test or a quiz. Okay? I'm giving you examples of things you will not have. All right, so given that you're not going to have a number line or the chips, I'm going to show you a super, super easy way on how to add integers. All right, I'm going to begin with something that you are familiar with, which is the scoreboard. All right? And Rockets is my team. Sorry. Here we go. I'm going to say Rockets versus Spurs. All right, let's say that I'm watching the game and you didn't watch it. Then when I come to school, you're like, hey, Miss Benjamin, how was the game? I'm going to tell you, of course, it was great. Rockets scored 110. The Spurs scored a lousy 92. So your next question would be, well, who won? And my answer will be, well, duh, the Rockets won. Well, by how many points? Well, if you look here, you're going to be able to tell that the Rockets won because they had a bigger number. And if you want to know by how much they won, what would you do? You're going to subtract. You're going to subtract 110 minus 92, which will give you 18. So my answer would be the Rockets won by 18 points. Do you understand the scoreboard? Pretty easy. Now, what we're going to do the same thing using integers. Here's my scoreboard, and in your scoreboard, when we're dealing with integers, we're always going to have negative versus positive. Okay? And look at the scoreboard right here. Here's my scoreboard. What operation do you see? It looks like what? An addition, right? So scoreboards only work when you add integers. I'm going to write this down. The scoreboard only works when you're adding integers. Okay? Now I'm going to give you the same examples that I gave you earlier when I proved my answers using the number line and the integer chips. Earlier we had a question where we had 4 plus negative 8. And if you want to rewind the tape, you can, or I'm sorry, the video, you can check for yourself. I proved it that the answer was negative 4. We used the number line and the little chips. This time we're not going to use any of that. We're going to use the scoreboard. So this is how you play it. All right, we have negative versus positive, right? Always. Those are going to be your two teams, negative versus positive. Well, let's look at our numbers. Here, I have my positives. How many did the positives score? They scored 4. Over here, I have my negatives. How many did the negatives score? They scored 8. All right, well, here's where the question comes in. Who won? The negatives. They have more points. Look, they have more points. Sorry. All right, we're going to ignore the negative sign for now. I just want to know who has more. Well, the negatives do, right? All right, well, they beat the positive team by how many points? Well, let's find out. You have 8, take away 4. They beat them by 4 more points. There were 4 more negatives than there were positives. So my answer would be negative 4. And that's what we got earlier when we used the number line. Let's do another one. Earlier, we had 4 plus negative 2. So I'm going to use, remember, we're adding, okay? So I can use the scoreboard. Anytime I'm adding integers, look at that sign. It looks like a addition sign, right? So my scoreboard is only for addition. And you'll understand it later when you see the subtracting integers video. You'll understand why I'm saying this. I'm going to repeat it over and over again. When you're adding integers, you can use the scoreboard. Only when you're adding integers. All right, so who are our teams? Always. We're always going to have the negative team and the positive team. Now let's look at our numbers. Here we go. That 4 represents the positives. And this negative represents, this negative 2 represents the negatives. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to ignore this right here. Don't even look at that. Let's look at the scoreboard. That's where our focus should be. All right, if I was to ask you, which team won, the positives or the negatives? Who scored more? Your answer would be positive. They scored 4 points. The negatives scored 2 points. But I want to know by how many points did the positives win? Well, let's do 4, take away 2. Your answer would be 2. But in this case, who won? the positives. So my answer has to be positive 2. Let's try a few more. Here we have negative 13 plus 4. All right, we're adding, so it's safe to use the scoreboard. All right, our teams are what? Negative and positive. They're always going to verse each other. All right, so negative versus positive. Let's look at our numbers. I have negative 13, so this here represents the negatives. They scored 13 points. This right here represents our positive. They scored 4. If I was to ask you who scored more points, you're going to say the negative team. Right? So automatically you should know that your answer is going to be negative. Well, by how many points did they beat them? Well, let's do this. 13 minus 4 is 9. So remember, again, pay attention. Your negative team won. That means it's negative 9. Do not forget the sign. Please, please don't forget. Now, just for your peace of mind, I'm going to draw the circles. And here I have 13 negatives, 4 positives. 0 pair, 0 pair, 0 pair, 0 pair. Remember, 0 pair is when you have one positive and one negative, and they cancel each other out. Now, if you look here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 negatives. Okay, so you can use the pictures if you want, but it's way faster if you just use the scoreboard. So here's another example. Let's say that you have 12 plus negative 12. So here are your negative versus positive. How much did the positive score team? Well, they scored 12. How much did the negative score team? They scored 12 also. Now, if I was to ask you who won, you're going to say neither of them won. 0 teams won. 0. And the reason it's 0 is because they had a tie, right? So neither of the teams won. If I do 12 minus 12, my answer is going to be 0. So when both digits are the same and they're opposite, it's going to be 0. Now let's go into a couple problems that are not hard at all, super easy, but you are going to see these type of problems on the test. All right, let's say that you come across a question that has more than 2 numbers. Here I have negative 12 plus positive 18 plus negative 2. All right, don't get scared. I promise this is just as easy. Watch this. Super easy. The rules never change. You have your negative team and your positive team. All right, if we start with the positives, how much did they score? They scored 18. The negatives, they scored 12. And they also scored 2. Okay, so what we're going to do is find their total. The positives have 18, and all together, the negatives scored 14. These right here are the final scores, correct? I hope I'm not moving too fast. I'm going to give you another example after this, and then we'll be done. All right, now that you have your total, what we're going to do is we're going to decide who won. Well, we have 18 for the positives and 14 for the negatives. Obviously, the positives won. Okay, so your answer is going to be positive. By how many points did they beat them? Well, let's see. 18 minus 14 is 4. So my answer would be 4. Positive 4. I don't want to draw all these chips, guys, or use the number line for this. Okay, if you want to check it, go ahead and check it yourself. That way you have more peace of mind. Let's move on to the next example. Now here I have negative 4 plus, this is why it's important to put the parentheses, negative 8 plus 5. Again, if we don't put the parentheses, it's going to look like negative 4 plus minus. And we don't do those operations like that. All right, rules never change. Negative team versus positive team. All right, the positives scored 5 points. The negatives, they scored 4 points, and they also scored 8 points. Let me put 4 points and 8 points. All right, all together, the positives scored 5, and the negatives scored 12. This right here shows my final points. All right, if I was to ask you, look at the final score. Who won? Negatives or positives? You're going to say the negatives team won. So automatically put a negative. By how many points did they beat them? Well, let's check. 12 minus 5 is 7. All right, so your answer will be -7. All right, now that we went quite over a few problems, let's go ahead and have you give it a shot. I'm going to give you 3 problems and see if you can do them. I'll give you the answer in just a moment. All right, here are your 2 questions. The first one is -8 plus 14. Number 2, your second question is 14 plus -3 plus 5. All right. Next to the picture on the left side, I drew your scoreboards. Don't forget, negative versus positive team. Always negative versus positive. Go ahead and give it a shot. Put the video on pause for just a moment, and when you're done, unpause the video and I'll make sure that I provide you with the correct answers. All right, here you go. Your paper should have looked like this. I'm sorry, this should just be the number. The negatives, here you are. This team scored 8. The positives scored 14. Which team won? The positives, so your answer should be a positive number. Well, the next question is, by how many points did they beat them? Well, let's check. 14 minus 8, that is 6. So the positive team won by 6 points. So your answer should have been +6. All right, let's look at the next one. Number 2, it should have looked like this. The negative team only scored a lousy 3 points. The positive team scored 14, and they also scored 5. All right, if I look at the total, they scored a total of 19, and the negatives a lousy 3. All right, well, which team won? Obviously, the positive team won. Okay, so your answer should have been positive. They scored a total of 19 points. Well, by how many points did they beat them? Let's subtract. 19 minus 3 is 16. Well, they beat them by 16 points. So your answer here is also a positive 16. Well, all right, guys, I hope that this helped you a bit. This is a video that I really suggest you watch ahead of time before you come into class. And you really need to understand it. I'll make sure to help you in class, because in order for you to subtract integers, you have to be strong with adding integers. Make sure you watch the next video on subtracting integers. Have a great day.